248, and then 40 years later they enter the land of Israel, right? Because they were in the desert for 40 years after they left Egypt. So that's 2488. Okay. 2488. They're in the land of Israel. They conquer the land of Israel under the leadership of Yehoshua. Okay, and it takes them 7 years to conquer, another 7 years till the land is properly divided out, sorted out, and then
why did it take so long?
I don't know, it takes time. There's, and then Yehoshua is the leader of the Jewish people, right? Similar to a king, and it's Yehoshua, but not a king in the sense there was no dynasty. It means there was no royal family that when he died, it automatically passed on to his children. That didn't exist, and the leadership went from one great person to another great person. Okay, that's through the whole of the period, about 350 years, give or take, whatever, approximately 350 years between the time that the Jews entered the land of Israel until the end of the Book of Shoftim. So the Book of Yeshua is primarily about the conquest, and then the division of the land between the different tribes. Right, there were 12 tribes, which each gets their lot, which was divided by lottery, and then they settled their lands, conquered lots of it. Lots of it remained unconquered during the time of Yeshua, and it was conquered gradually over the coming years and continuously until King David conquered the whole area, which was in the borders of the land designated to the Jewish people. Also in the book of Yeshua, we have the division of the Levite cities. The tribe of Levi was not given a contiguous, I think that's the word, right, piece of land. It wasn't one tribal unit. It was spaced around the land of Israel in 48 Levite cities. So when we're going to be very soon, we're going to meet a group of Levian, and they live in a Levite city. And there, they didn't really have their own big tract of land to farm. They had a small piece of land which was enough just for their own food. They couldn't business. There was no business that they had. Okay, their business was to be in the temple, and they were provided to do their income from the people, the tithes that we talked about in the book of Nehemiah. Okay, that is the Levites. That's really the end of the book. The book is the division of the land and the Levite cities. And then the refugee cities, which when a person kills by mistake, he has to flee to a city that's also mentioned in the book of Yeshua. That's more or less what it is. Then Yeshua dies, and there's a new leader called Osniel ben Kenaz. Now the leaders were only there either to fight against enemies, because there were lots of Goyish people around. There were Amalekites, there were Edomites, there were Pelishtim, there were Arameans, there were Ammonites, Moabites, Lebanese, whatever they're called Surim, Surah. Yeah, lots of people around who bothered the Jews. And through the book of Shoftim, we have from one person to another, and one nation to another nation who's giving the Jews problems. And each time they had a leader who rose to gather them, to fight, to lead them spiritually. That's what they had. Now, the general pattern in the book of Shoftim is that the Jewish people strayed after the activities of their non-Jewish neighbors. See, although Yeshua and his armies captured lots of the land of Israel, there's lots of land they didn't capture. So there's still pagan Canaanites who lived in the land of Canaan. Some were the tribal unit next door, some of them in the town next door, some in the house next door. There was a lot of different towns with different.
To kill on everybody.
Correct.
Right?
That's what they were expected to do, but they didn't.
Unless they converted.
Correct. Right. Correct. So that caused intermarriage. It caused pagan practices, and therefore, and as the people turned to these ways, they were attacked by Goyim. That was a message from God that they're doing something wrong. And then the general pattern was that people would then repent, do tshuva, and daven, and God would send a leader. So the leader was named Gidon, and Shimshon, and Devorah, and Yiftach, and others those are the big names. There's lots of stories about them. There's others who just have one line. Okay? And each of them, it tells you how long the person was in charge, 40 years, 70 years, 30 years, whatever. Okay? And that's the general story all the way through. And the famous story is the last story in the book of Shoftim, is the story of Shimshon, who was this very strong fellow who fought, but he was sort of an individual. He did his own work. He didn't go and fight with armies like Devorah did or like Yiftach did. He fought on his own.
Samson?
Samson, yeah.
What about the end of Shoftim? There's like couple stories that are about.
There's one story there about Pilegesh Begiva, which is a very shocking story, which you'll do sometime when you learn Shoftim. And there's another story there about Pesel Micha. Right, those are the two stories, end of Shoftim. Right.
I want to understand that those take place at the beginning.
That's a bit of a debate. There's a lot of discussion. Rashi at length and the portion discussion. They're not clearly associated with any particular person. So they could have taken place any time in Shoftim. There's no leader who's involved in the stories. They're just stories that happened at the time of the Shoftim. The Shoftim means judges, which in our sense are really some type of spiritual leadership. Right? They may have judged them as well, right? But that's not really what the point of their name is. Okay, that's the book of Yeshua, the book of Shoftim, and now what about the temple? There's no temple, but there is a Mishkan. The Mishkan which went with them around the desert for 40 years, which is really portable, dismantleable. For 14 years, the 14 years it took them to capture and divide the land, the Mishkan was in a place called Gilgal, which is the first place they moved to after they crossed over the Jordan River. Then, for I think 359 years, it moved to a place called Shiloh, and it's there now. It means at the time of the beginning of the Book of Shmuel, the Mishkan is not there today, right? At the beginning of the Book of Shmuel, the Mishkan is still in Shiloh. It's coming towards the end of that period. I mentioned there's 350 years approximately. It's coming towards the end of that period, and we'll see what happens to it very soon. So that's in Shiloh. Now, it's worthwhile, let me show you this map. Where did I bring my map with me? What did I do with it? Here it is. We need this more for the book of Yeshua, but just give you an idea what Israel looked like and where these places are. You can think there's one passed down that side, okay? One over here. Yeah. Primarily needed, I say. This is another one. And I've got here a color one where you can see. Okay, this is the color one. Right? Here you have the land of Israel, familiar, the Dead Sea, which doesn't really look like that anymore. The Kinneret. In those days, there was another sea up here, which isn't there today, but it was drained out in the 50s, right? By the Israelis. The Israelis, because it was eventually decided it was an ecological mistake, but at the time they felt it would solve the mosquitoes which were causing diseases. They drained it by directing the water. They planted eucalyptus trees as well. Right? Kept them from the Australians.
Wait, hold on. What's the issue with eucalyptus trees?
No, because the roots drain up a lot of water.
Yeah, they suck. They're oily and they catch fire.
It's clear this was a sea till then. I met people in old age home who told me, you remember as a kid used to go there on boating trips in this lake that was there. It was called the Chula. Right? Then it was dried up, there was no water in it, and then the birds that migrate over Israel, a lot of the birds that go from Europe to Africa have nowhere to, can't fly over the Mediterranean because it's too far. So they needed, the only land that connects Russia and Europe to Africa is Israel. So they had nowhere to land, and all these birds died in the sea, right? Because they didn't have anywhere to fly. Okay? And I mean, they could have flown somewhere, but what they used to do is they would rest here, and this was the lake that they would. So the Israelis turned it back into, and today it's a Hula Nature Reserve where there are millions of birds migrate there every year. But they didn't return the whole lake, but they just made certain ponds there, which you can go to. Anyway, that's not related.
Is it ever mentioned in Tanach or?
It is, the sea is mentioned there, yeah. I think there was a battle near there called the May Meron, which related to Meron, which is just over here. See? Sort of there. Anyway, I think that's what it is. It's not important for our discussion. So here we have the backbone of Israel is these mountains. These are the mountains of Judah, which is where we live. You see in the middle of Yerushalayim. And the mountains continue all the way up here. These are called the mountains of Ephraim. You see here the tribes are divided. It's not so easy to read. Here you have Shimon, which didn't really have a contiguous area. It had a few towns within the tribe of Yehuda. The tribe of Shimon and Levi, that was actually the curse that Yaakov gave his sons blessings. And Levi and Shimon got a blessing that they would be dispersed amongst Israel. So Levi was dispersed all the way around the country in 48 towns, and Shimon had towns within the tribe of Yehuda, as if Yehuda were keeping watch on
when
it.
the north would...
Good question. You're about to ask whether you get the 10 tribes, lost tribes. I don't know, it's a whole discussion, not for now. Okay, so this is the tribe of Yehuda, which had the biggest area, and then you have the tribe of Dan, which we'll see, most important. Dan in Shoftim felt that the area around him, which was called Gush Dan, the Dan bus company, because it's the area of Dan around Tel Aviv, which is Yaffo, they felt a bit squashed, so they also moved up north. So this area up here is called Tel Dan. The tribe of Dan lived up here. They had two parts, up here and down here. So here we have Ephraim, Manasseh. There's considered two separate tribes, even though both from Yosef. For the purposes of the land allotment, they're considered two tribes. You have Yisachar, Zevulun, Naphtali is up here, Asher, and that's it. Okay, now on the eastern side of the Jordan, we have lands that were allotted by Moshe Rabbeinu when they fought against Sichon and Og. We have here the country of Moab. The north of Moab is the tribe of Reuven. We have here the country of Ammon. The west of Ammon is the tribe of Gad. And north of that, which is the Golan, is Manasseh. So there's three tribes, or it's half of Manasseh, because Manasseh has here and here. So you have 2.5 on the east, and we have 9.5 on the west. Those are the tribes. This green part is the Jordan Rift Valley, which is the lowest point on earth. Right? You know that? Okay, good. Here we have Yerushalayim, we have Tel Aviv, here's Haifa, Akko. This is already Lebanon, Sur. We talked about the Tsurim, those were the shopkeepers who opened their shops on Shabbos in Yerushalayim, originally came from Sur. Mentioned, talked about it. They tend to sell their fish on Shabbos, and right at the end of the book of
Get all the way down.
No, I know they came every week all the way down here, but they were Phoenicians, they were traders, so they traded their goods in Yerushalayim on Shabbos.
Hiram was from?
Hiram, very good. He helps HaMelech build the Beit HaMikdash, but that's giving the story we're not up to there yet. Okay, all right, that's the map to know where we are. Okay, I suppose we can start the Book of Shmuel. Okay, so it would seem that Shimshon is probably the last leader of the Jewish people who lived before this story, and Shimshon has been killed by the Philistines. Famous story. He was blinded. He was caught, and then he right, and he literally brought the house down, as they say, and killed 3,000 Philistines in the process.
He killed more
in his death than he did in his life. Correct. That's what it says. Okay, so he's dead and buried. He was killed by the Philistines, and the Philistines are the major problem that we had at the time. Not always, but at this particular time. Now, where are the Philistines? You know the Philistines, this is where the Palestinians are today, in Pelishtim. That's where they live. It's really part of the land of Israel. It would seem that the word Pelishtim means invaders, right? In Hebrew, a Polesh, Pei Lamed Shin, is an invader. They weren't really Canaanites. They invaded from archaeologists claim that they're actually from Crete or some type of Greek, and that's why their pottery or whatever it looks like the same as the Greeks. Whatever, you accept what they say, that's fine. But whatever, that's why the whole area was seen always as, yes, Israel is not really Israel because they weren't really Canaanites. But on the other hand, they occupied an area that had once been Canaanites, and that's why it's included in the land of Canaan.
And Palestine today is not related to Philistine.
No,
No, they
The name is related. That's all.
when Rome took over the land, they wanted to erase the Jewish
Yeah,
identity
yeah.
here. So one of the things they did was look through our books, found out that the Philistines were some of our greatest enemies. So said, let's name this after them.
Okay.
So it became Syria, Palestina.
Okay. But the people who live there today are not Pelishtim, they're Arabs, who are not related to Pelishtim at all, right? The Arabs are descended from Avraham Avinu, just like we are, okay? And the Pelishtim are from Yavan, a different place altogether. Okay, so here you have a copy of these books, Sefer Shmuel. You can keep it, you can give back them in class. Exactly the same style as it's been up till now. Okay, what you
This
got?
is bigger than the last one.
Oh yes, this is very. This is, by the way, this is only half the book. Okay?
Yep.
Yes, we call it Shmuel Aleph. Again, going back to the non-Jewish divisions of the books of Tanach, we call it Shmuel Aleph, but really it is just the book of Shmuel, and it's only the first half. Right? The Goyim divided the book of Shmuel. I don't know why. Maybe it's just very, very cumbersome, right?
Huge thing.
It's just for convenience, because the Goyim owned the printing presses where they printed the first Tanachs, and they decided how to divide it into their chapters, and that's just became useful to use it because all our commentaries are commentaries printed by, like people say, you want to make a computer program, it has to fit Microsoft, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay. So it has to fit. That's just for convenience. You can buy a Tanakh which is not divided according to the Goyish things, but it's not very useful, even though it's much more purely Jewish, right? But you just have to ignore it, that's all, and give more importance to the Pei and the Samach, as we've mentioned many times. The Pei is the major division, right? It just means that there's a break until the end of the line. A Samach means there's a break of 9 letters space, but it doesn't go to the end of the line, which is a lesser break. That's all you have to remember, and then you'll get the more accurate version of the story. Now, who wrote the book of Shmuel? Tradition has it that Shmuel wrote it. Right? That means there's a Gemara in the end of the first parak of Baba Basra, which discusses who wrote the books of Tanach, and it says Shmuel wrote the Book of Shmuel. Now, obviously, he didn't write it all, because towards the end of Shmuel Aleph, he dies. Okay? So, obviously, he didn't write, towards the end of Shmuel Aleph, he dies. So, obviously, unless he was writing it prophetically, then that's a bit silly, right? The whole of the book was written, the rest of the book, I think, was written by King David.
Did he write the previous, did you write Shoftim?
I don't think so. He might have done. I don't know. It could be the same Gemara talks about that as well. And definitely says it could have done. Yeah, because he lived at the end of that. Okay, the Gemara there. Okay, let's start. Shmuel Aleph, Perek Aleph, on page 3 in your booklet. You want one, Shane? You can have one if you want. It's free. Doesn't cost anything. Okay. Vayehi. So let's go slowly and try and translate it all. Vayehi. And it was Ish Echad, one man. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean one man as opposed to two, because if it would have said Ish, it would have meant exactly the same thing, right? You don't need to point out when there's one. If it would have said, he, Ish, Min, would have meant the same thing. So obviously, one means number one. I just think it was one man, right? You understand? Ish would also have meant one man, okay? So it means somebody unique, number one, someone special. There was a special man, okay? He, Ish, Echad, or you would say in Hebrew, Meyuchad. No, what Meyuchad means special. Okay, but it's also on the word echad. Number one, okay? Min haramasayim tzofim. That's a bit of a difficult thing, but it's the town where he came from. Just a funny name. Ramasayim is a plural name, isn't it? If it would say Rama, that would be from what word? From the word Ram. Ram means elevated, high. So obviously he came from a town where it was on a hill. That's why it's called, like, for example, the town that I come from is called Ramot. Right? So Ramot sounds like it's plural in the sense that there's a few heights. There's Ramot Gimel is one hill, and Ramot Dalet is another hill. So altogether it's called Ramot. Okay, you could call it Ramah, right? There is a place in Tanach called Ramah, which actually this is probably the real name of this place is Ramah, because it says later on that Shmuel lived in Ramah, and he probably lived in the place where he was born, which is Ramah. Okay, so why would it be called Ramot? Because there's more than one. But Ramatayim is like Ramot, doubles. So it's probably a few different groups of hilltops, which altogether are called Ramatai. Now, Tzofim. That's a word that's going to come a lot, and you have to remember what it means. Tzofer means?
Sofer?
Sefer, no.
No. Look inside. Sofer is Samach Vav Pei Reish. This is Tzadi Vav Pei Yud Mem. Not Sofer. Sofer. Tzadi Vav Pei Hey. It's in the plural. What's Tzofer? No, that's Tzafon, where the nun is a root letter.
Sophie.
What is, here it happens to be in the plural, but the root is Tzofer. Now you've heard of Har HaTzofim?
The mountain of Sophia?
Yes, well where is it? What's it called in English? Har HaTzofim, come on, you don't know? Har HaTzofim. There's a university on Har HaTzofim. There's a hospital. What?
Haifa.
No, that's what he said.
No,
really?
There's more than one. What about universities in Jerusalem? What are they called? Hebrew U. Where is it? Mount Scopus. So you know the English name, and in Hebrew it's called Har HaTzofim. Yes, that's its Hebrew name, Har HaTzofim. So another part of the university is in Givat Ram, but that's another part of the same university. Okay, there's also a hospital in Har HaTzofim. It's called Hadassah Har HaTzofim. There's Hadassah Ein Karem, which is the other one. That's one Hadassah, but there's another Hadassah which is on Har HaTzofim.
I think it's Scopus from the Sophia.
I tell you, because the word Tzofim means Scopus. So Scopus is the Latin for Tzofim. What does Scopus mean? You know what Scopus means, that's your problem.
Yeah.
What does Scopus mean? Telescope, periscope, microscope. What does the word scope mean? To look. The word scope means to look. So you can look closely, you can look from afar, you can look as a pera, whatever it means, a periscope. That's the word scope means to look. Tzofim means to look. That's why it's the same word. A tzofer is a scout. You know, the brownies, right?
Yes.
Scouts, Boy Scouts. So the Ivrit word for scouts is tzofim. You go to the tzofim. Well, you would go to scouts, they had to go to tzofim. Okay? So tzofer, the word's used in Tanach as well, meaning scouts, but it doesn't mean Boy Scouts. It means scout, person who's scouting out the land to see. A tzofer is a person who looks at a distance. So that mountain, Har HaTzofim, is the highest mountain in this area. And if you want to see all the way around, to the Jordan desert, and also to the other places you go to, Tzofim. So any lookout, not only that mountain is called Tzofim, and Yaakov Avinu and Lavan. You remember a few weeks ago, Yaakov Avinu ran away, and Lavan chased after him. And then Lavan caught up to him, and they made a whole agreement. And what did they do? They built a pile of stones. Remember that? But the pile, it was a monument. Then it also is mentioned the mitzpah. And mitzpah is the same word, it means a lookout. So you can either call the lookout Har HaTzofim, it's on the top of a mountain, and if it's not a mountain, or you whatever, you call it mitzpah. So the mitzpah here, for example, the place where Shmuel HaNavi is buried, it's called mitzpah. It's about half an hour's walk from where I live. It's called mitzpah. And what it is, it's the highest mountain, not that overlooks the Jordan plain, but you can see all the way to the Tel Aviv. Right? So anyone who, on a good day, anyone who wants to see all the armies that are coming to attack Yerushalayim would make a fortress on top of Mitzpah, and that's why there's a Crusader fortress up there, which is the burial site of Shmuel HaNavi.
Where's Mitzpah?
Mitzpah. Not Mitzpah Yericho, which is another place. It means Yericho lookout. That's where Rabbi Leader lives. Mitzpah Yericho. Okay, so Mitzpah is a lookout. It's in just north of Ramat. Half an hour's walk from where I live in Ramat. Right? It's called Nebi Samuel. Nebi Samuel is Arabic for Shmuel HaNavi, right? Nebi Samuel. Navi Samuel. So he's buried there, at least that's what people assume, although there's a bit of a discussion about it. And there's a few Crusader fortress built on an ancient Maccabean fortress, which is built on even more ancient ruins. There's also an Arab mosque there, because they also venerate him, which is why they call it Nebi Samuel. Okay? All right. That's called a mitzvah, and mitzvah means a lookout. So we're talking about a place which is a hilly area, and it's also a place of tzofim. Okay, that's one way to view the pasuk, that it was a lookout. But there's another reason to think the word here means something else entirely, which we'll see in a second. Okay, that's how you'd normally translate it. Mehar Ephraim. Now this man, this very unique man, came from a place called Ramasayim Tzofim, and it was in the mountains of Ephraim. So if you remember on the map, you'll see Ephraim is just north of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is on the border between Yehuda and Binyamin. You'll see on the map. And north of Binyamin is Ephraim. So it's somewhere in Ephraim, right? So if it's somewhere near Ramat, it's actually on the southern part, right on the border between Ephraim and Binyamin, in the mountains of Ephraim. Now the mountains of Ephraim doesn't necessarily mean it was actually in the tribe of Ephraim. It's a mountain range which primarily was in the tribe of Ephraim, and doesn't change its name just because the southern tip of it happens to be in the tribe of Binyamin, or the northern tip may be in the tribe of Yisachar. It's called the mountain range of Ephraim. That's just the name of a mountain range, even though maybe parts of it, right, maybe Ramah is actually in Binyamin, okay, but it's in the mountains of Ephraim. That's what it's called. Okay, that's the mountain range. Ushmai, the name of this man was Elkanah, and he was the son of Yerocham, the son of Elihu, the son of Toichu, the son of Tzuf. Okay? Now, you could continue the lineage. If you look at the book of Divrei Hayomim, right, there's a longer list, and it takes it all the way back to Levi.
Really?
Yes. Now, it's possible why the author here doesn't bother going all the way back. And it is a bit strange that if you're already going back, keep going. Usually when people's names are mentioned, it's just mentioned them and their father. That's how it is. And because that's really a way of saying family names. It tells you who you are, okay? If the father, or you want to stress the person's lineage, so you want to go back as far as you know, okay? Like Ezra, when Ezra tells you his lineage, it goes all the way back to Aaron, okay? And we know it's not like the authors of Tanach know this person's lineage. They can trace it all the way back to Levi. So I don't really know why it stops here. The Malbim suggests that he was the last well-known member of the family. It means the family, like I mentioned before, the Ibn Ezra family, or the Kimchi family, or the Maimon family, trace their lineage back to a certain member of their family. That doesn't mean that they can't go further back. It just means he was the most well-known member of the family, so the family gets its name from this person. Get me? Well, anyone called Maimon today is descended from the Rambam's father, whose name was Maimon. Right? Oh, it's true that he descended from Moshe, from the Rambam, but the person who was called Maimon was the Rambam's son. That was his name, Moshe ben Maimon. So when his father was called up to the Torah, his father was Maimon ben Ephraim. I don't know what his grandfather's name was, right? But that was his name. But he was the person who gave the family its name. So it could be that this person called Tzuf was why the descendants were called Tzofim. Not because they came from a place that had a lookout, but because the ancestor of this family was called Tzuf, so they were called Tzufim or Tzofim. Get it? It's true, normally the word Tzofim means a lookout, and it does mean that. And that's probably the reason why this guy called Tzuf had that name, but maybe he was a scout. But the point is his name was Tzuf, and his descendants were called Tzofim. So the Malbim suggests that his descendants moved to this area, and that's why the name of the area was called Ramatayim Tzofim, because the Tzofim lived there. This whole big family, extended family, Elkanah's cousins and second cousins and third cousins, all lived in this area of this Ramat, and that's why it's called Ramatayim Tzofim. Not because it was a scout, and not because the area was used by scouts, but because this family called Tzofim lived there. Okay. Ephrati, who was an Ephrati? Ephrati means from Ephraim, so it's talking about Tzuf. This Tzuf was originally from the mountains of Ephraim, but he moved to another area called Ramasayim, which was another area of the Ephraim. Now, they weren't from Ephraim in the sense they didn't come from the tribe of Ephraim. They came from which tribe? They came from the tribe of Levi. Okay, if you look in Divrei Yom, you'll see that these people their lineage is tracked to Levi, actually to Kahas. But we know from the book of Yoshua that the cities that Levi received, the tribe of Kahas, some of their cities with the mountains of Ephraim. Okay, so it fits in. They were originally from the mountains of Ephraim, and they moved somewhere close by to the Ramasayim Tzofim, and it was occupied by this section of the family called Tzofim. Okay, let's continue. V'loi, and to him, shtei nashim, 2 women, which means he had 2 wives. Right? It looks like this was unusual, right? We're not supposed to point it out, right? A guy would have 2 wives. Now, why would a guy have 2 wives? Isn't one enough?
If she doesn't give him children.
Very good. If the first wife doesn't give him children, so he has 2 solutions, right? He can take a second one. If it's too expensive for him to take 2, because he's going to have to feed both and buy clothes for both and provide for them, he'll have to divorce one and take the second one and give the first one her ketubah, which is a lot of money, but it's cheaper than keeping her on for the rest of her life, right? But he didn't do that, maybe because he could afford to have 2 wives, right? Or maybe he loved her and he didn't want to divorce her, right? Could be lots of reasons, right? Anyway, he has 2 wives. It would seem that you're correct, that that's why he married her, because it says in a second. Shema Achas Chana, the name of one of his wives was Chana. The Shema Shenis, the name of the second one, implying that it doesn't say B'Shem Ha'acheres, the other one, it says Shenis. Shenis means? Second. So it sounds like this was the second wife. Right? Not saying second in importance, but he had 1 wife and then he took a second one, right? And the reason why he wants to point out who was first and who was second, because the reason why she was first is because that was the one he wanted to marry, and the reason why he took the second one is because the first one didn't have any children. How was he going to see in a second? So her name was Chana. Anyone know what Chana means? Chana. The root of the word Chana is? Very good, from Chain. The hey at the end is just a feminine way of saying it. Okay? Chain means gracious. Gracious means when a person is graceful, it means the way they act. It can mean that they're gracious in the like God's grace. What does that mean? It doesn't mean God's graceful. It means it does. It doesn't mean the way he walks. It means he does things free. Like God's grace means he doesn't owe you anything. He does it just because he's super kind. So it's related in Hebrew to the word chinam. What does chinam mean? For free. Chinam is for free. So it means it's a name you give to a girl if she thinks she's graceful. Okay? Or she's been given to you by God's grace. Chana. That's what the Chana means. Chana is Chain, is gracious. The Hey may mean God. Could be, or could just be a feminine word of Chain. Okay, that's a very nice name. What was the name of the second one? Her name was Penina, which means, anyone know? Penina. Yukarahi. I'm not. It probably relates to the word face, as we said. It's panim, right? There's a double nun, right? Yukarahi mi peninim. It is more precious than peninim. Peninim are pearls. Pearl, as in Pearl Harbor, right? A pearl. Now, the reason why a pearl is probably called penina is how do you make pearls, or how do you get pearls?
Sand and
It's a drop of a grain of sand inside the oyster and whatever the irritates. I don't know what it is. And it turns out, so it's probably related to the word panim, which means lifnim means inside. You get it? Now it's true the face is called panim, but panim means the inside. The reason why we call the face panim is because the face is an expression of what's inside. On your face, you express what you're feeling. You're sad or happy. So it's the way you express what's inside. But the word panim really means inside, right? It's come to mean face. So it could be the reason why pearl is called panina, because it's created inside the oyster. Maybe, I have no idea. Okay, it's not so important, but those are their names. Two nice names. One's called Graceful, and one's called, you see what a name, Grace, right? Princess Grace, isn't she? She's the queen of Monte Carlo. She was a film actress, Grace Kelly. She was a film actress, and she married the king of Monte Carlo. Okay, anyway, it's not important. There's a name. Okay, Grace is a name, and Pearl is also a name, right? Pearl. I knew a girl when I was brought up. His name was Pearl. Okay, so these are names in English as well. Vayhi Penina yeladim. Penina had children. Ulechana ein yeladim. She has no children. So we're guessing that that's the reason why he had his two wives. He first had Chanana, she didn't have any children, but he wanted children, so he unfortunately had to take a second wife, and she gave him children. Ve'ala ha'ish, hahu me'iroi miyamim yamina. That man, who we've been talking about, who's called Elkanah, went up. Now it doesn't say he went up, because then we'd say Vaya'al. We talked about this a few days ago. Vaya'al would mean he then went up. Ve'ala means he had gone up. Or in this context means he used to go up. It was once something he had done once. He'd done it in the past, he was doing it in the present, and he intended to do it in the future. So Ve'ala ha'ish means he would go up. He used to do this. This man would go up. Me'iroi, from his city, which was Ramathayim Tzofim, Miyamim Yamima. Now, the word yom means day. Yamim is the plural, days. But we mentioned once before that although literally it means days, it often means a year. We mentioned because the year is the sum total of all the days there are. Okay, so Miyamim Yamima means once a year. From 1 year to the next. He would do this on a regular yearly cycle once a year. That's what it means. What would he do? He would go up, lehishtachavot. It's not lehishtachot. How do I know it's not lehishtachot? How do I know it's lehishtachot? Very good. Since there's a vowel under the ches, so we know the vowel of the ches already. What's there a vav afterwards? It must be a vav and not just a chaylam. Lehishtachavot to what?
Drink.
No, that would be lishtot. Here you've got a ches in the middle. Right? It's actually not just a ches, there's a ches and a vav. Because the vav is a vowel, it's not just, the vav is a consonant, it's one of the root letters, right? So what is it? It's to bow down, to prostrate himself. Okay? It's a reflexive. Reflexive means something you do to yourself. Reflective, reflexive when something you do to yourself. So in Hebrew, to say to do to yourself, you don't have to write all that sentence. You just have to add a tof into it. So if you look, there's a tof. Can you see the tof after the shin? Now usually, get this in your heads, usually the tof of the reflexive is before the vowel letters, before the root letters. For example, lehit rachetz means Hit rachetz means to wash yourself. Rachetz means to wash. Lehit rachetz is to wash yourself. Lavash means to dress. Lehit labesh means to get yourself dressed. So you always put the taf before the three root letters. Sometimes the taf appears in the middle of the root letters and confuses you to think that this is one of the root letters. Look at this word. You'd say, well, it must be shin taf ches. That's what you would have said, right? That's what you said, no. He's shin taf ches, but you're wrong. It's not. The root letters are shin, ches, hey. So the hey has become a vav, but it's shin, ches, hey, which is shacha. Shacha means to bow down. The taf in the middle is not a root letter. The taf in the middle implies the reflexive, something you do to yourself. You get down on your knees. Now the reason why that's done, as I was taught in school, Dylan made the same expression last time I said this class, right? This is really frustrating, right? It gets more frustrating, but we'll leave it at that, which is, the reason for this is it's very difficult to say, lehit shachot. If you write normally, you'd have to say the tof before the shin, and then you'd have to sort of close your mouth and stop in the middle. So you have to say a shin after a tof. Apparently, that's difficult to say. Lehit, you'd have to stop in the middle. Lehit shachot. Lehit shachot. Lehit shachot. Right? So you'd have to stop. We don't want to stop in the middle of the word. So it's easier if you swap the letters round and you say lehishtachot. After a shin, you don't have to stop. Right? After a top, you have to stop. You get it? So it would break. It would break the ability to say the word quickly. So therefore, I think that's the reason why in Hebrew, when you get the first root letter is a shin, then instead of putting the tof for the reflexive beforehand, you put it afterwards. Okay, let's leave it at that. There's other cases and there are exceptions to this rule as well. Whatever, that's more complicated. When we get to more complicated ones, we'll do it. Right? At the moment, we'll leave it at that. You got me? When the first root letter of words is a shin, and you want to say the reflexive, so the reflexive tof appears after the shin, not before the shin. Okay, lehishtachavot, not lehishtachot. Lehishtachavot. He went to bow himself. Where did he do this? We'll find in a second. V'lizboach, and to sacrifice. A zevach is a sacrifice. L'Hashem, to the Lord. Tzvakot. Now I read it tzvakot because it's one of Hashem's names. So just like Yud Kei Vav Kei Aved is L'Hashem, the tradition is usually to say tzvakot, unless you're actually reading the pasuk in the Chumash. So technically I could read it because I'm reading the verse and translating it, but it's not usually done.
What if you're just saying that word by itself without Hashem?
Okay, so now the word, what does the word really mean? The word really means an army.
The army of
Right?
Hashem.
Tzva HaHagana Yisrael, which is the real way of saying Tzahal. Tzahal is the name of the Israeli army, right? The Israeli defense force, right? So the word Tzava means an army. Now, an army doesn't have to be soldiers with rifles. You can have an army of angels, an army of women. I don't mean with female soldiers, God forbid. I meant when the Torah talks about women coming to the temple and praying in the Mishkan, right? It also uses the word Tzava. It means when a large group of people come together to do something. So it doesn't have to be an army. You can have an army of ants, right? Well, they're not got guns, but they're all together doing something. That's the point. Okay? So when you talk about the armies of the sky, you mean the stars or the angels. Okay? So God is called the God of the armies because he's really the God of everything. Of all the armies that you can think of, he's the God of them. He's the God of the angels, he's the God of the stars, he's the God of the people, he's the God of the armies, he's God of every group that you can think of. Now, this I've been told, I don't know because I just don't know Tanach, that this is the first place this name appears. It's the first place God is called that name in the Book of Shmuel.
Wow.
Now, the first one to actually use the expression was Chana. Chana is the wife of Elkanah. So, it doesn't appear in her statement until later on, but she said it before the book was written, right? Because the book was written by, I don't want to give the story away, the book was written by Shmuel, who was her son. So the idea of calling God this name seems to have been invented by Chana. I use the word invented, but I'm tongue-in-cheek. I don't mean, it seems a person to use it. Obviously, the description that God was actually that could have been ancient, but it was not written by anybody. It may not have been used by anyone, we've no idea. We don't have any record. The first person recorded to use that name of God is Chana. And this is the first place it's mentioned in Tanach that's so. So he come to bow down and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts. That's why it's all translated in English, but to me it means nothing. To me, a host is a guy who you go to his house for Shabbos and he's your host. How you know? Yeah, but what's going to do with it? Why is that called him the Lord of Hosts? It means nothing to me. To me, it means the Lord of the armies is a much better description. Now, why Chana used that word, we'll see. Why she invented this name of God. We'll get there, all in good time. In Shiloh, I mentioned that was the name where the Mishkan had been for about 360 years by the time of this story. A little bit earlier, 350. Okay, that was where it was. You still can go to the day. Right, if you look on your map, you'll see where Shiloh is. Right, look on your map. Where was the map gone? Yes.
At the bottom.
The bottom, thank you very much. Okay, so let's have a look. You'll find Shiloh. It's not so near his house. His house, according to what we're saying, his house is north of Yerushalayim. You'll see that the tribe of Binyamin, and that borders with Ephraim. So if you look at a place called here, just north of Yerushalayim, there's a place called Ramah. So it could be that's where he's from. I'm not sure. We don't really know where the same top of him is, but there's a place called Ramah there. And Shiloh is just northeast of Shiloh, of Ramah. Get me right. You find Yerushalayim on the map, the big square in the middle of the page, Yerushalayim. Directly north of that square is a place called Ramah, Reish Mem Hey, a little circle. It's about 1 centimeter above Yerushalayim. Got it? Ramah. It's not so easy to see. Ramah. Okay, if you go north of there about 3 centimeters, north of northeast, you get Shiloh. So that's where he went. Right, just underneath the Aleph of Ephraim, it's Shiloh.
You're saying centimeters on the map. I'm thinking myself like.
No.
Like,
Centimeters on the
I
map.
walk out Shar Shchem and I see this.
Okay, so that's where he'd gone. He went there once a year. What was he going there? To bring a sacrifice. Now it looks like other people didn't go. Even though, yes, there's a mitzvah to go 3 times a year to the Beis HaMikdash, right? It's possible that he went 3 times a year. I don't know. It just means he went every year for Pesach, every year for Sukkot. But it doesn't say clearly, right? It just mentions once a year, okay? It looks like Chazal say that this was a mitzvah that people had, what's the word?
Trouble.
Stop doing. There's a better word for it. And he encouraged people to do it. So Zal even say that Elkanah used to take a different route every time he went. In order, and people say, "Where are you going?" So I'm going to the Mishkan because there's a mitzvah. Oh, great! Okay, we'll join you. So, and every time he went on a different route to get more people, and he encouraged people to come to the Mishkan. But in his time, it was unusual that people did it. He used to do it. He used to go to the Mishkan every year to bow down and to bring sacrifice. So the sacrifice was obviously being Korban Pesach, which you have to do on Pesach time, and but maybe not. Maybe
Where
just
was
went
it
to
again?
Shiloh is just over here.
The middle.
Right, just underneath Ephraim, and he lives somewhere around here. And now I say these are the mountains of Ephraim, even though it's technically in the tribe of Binyamin, if that's where he lived. I don't know if the same Ramah is the same place. I don't know. I know that Shmuel's buried there. So it makes sense that his father should have lived there, but not necessarily, right? Makes sense. All right, let's continue. Visham, and in the Mishkan. Right, this is where the Mishkan was. Shnei b'nei Eli, or the 2 sons of Eli. Now we don't know who Eli is, okay? But we'll learn out the story that Eli was the high priest. He was the Kohen Gadol, and his 2 sons. So they were the ones who did the work on a regular basis. Obviously, other Kohen must have helped them on occasions, but they were the ones who ran the place. Eli and his 2 sons. Who were they? Chofni was one. Just a minute. Chofni, I don't know what the name means. I mean, a chofen is a fistful. This is a chofen. Now, part of the temple service, when you bring a flower offering, is the Kohen fills his fist full and puts on the altar. So maybe that's where he gets the name Chofni. I have no idea, because of one of the things they do. And Pinchas was a family name. It's not the same Pinchas that we know in the Midbar, because he killed Zimri 350 years before. Now, he may still have been alive. That could be. That's another tradition that Pinchas was actually still alive. That's another story. That's not the point. I'm not saying he died, but he wasn't the son of Eli. Pinchas in there was the grandson of Aaron, not the son of Eli. Okay? So it's just a family name, right? Just like my grandfather was called Moshe and I'm called Moshe, so he was named after his grandfather called Pinchas. Not a big deal. Yeah?
So why does it mention his son, Eli's son before Eli? Why does it say Shnei b'nei Eli when it could have said Eli, the Shnei?
Because they're important to the story, you'll see. Eli is not as important to the story as they are. You'll get when we get there. So there, it could be Eli was learning and Eli didn't bother himself with the Mishkan. I don't know. Later. Kayanim Lashem, they are priests to God. It means they're doing the priestly service in the Mishkan. Vayhi Hayoim, and it was the day. It means on this day. It means the day that the following story is about to happen.
Yes.
Right? And this is the story happened on this day. Vayizbach Elkanah slaughtered. V'nasan li Penina Ishtay, and he gave to Penina his wife, ulachal baneha, and to all her
Children.
sons, right? Because it could mean children, but here it means sons, because the next word is ubenoteha, and her daughters. Because clearly the word ben here means a son. So he gave to his wife and to all her sons and her daughters monois. We had that word in Nehemiah. What does monois mean?
Corbin.
No. Mishloach monois. We want Purim.
Portion.
A portion, right. You send a portion, you send him, right? It's not really a present. Matana is a present. Mana means a portion.
What are you doing?
In the plural.
On-
On Purim,
yeah.
right? You send a challah, a bottle of wine, you wrap it up, send it to someone. Right? That's what we do. You're really sending him a portion for his meal. That's the point. You really should be sending some fish and chicken. That's what you're supposed to do, right? We don't do that because this guy got his own fish and chicken, doesn't need your fish and chicken. So you send him But that's the point, right? The idea is to send him a portion of food to eat at the
And
Purim
who's
Seder.
him? Or just anyone?
Okay?
Who's him?
Someone you want to be more friendly with, right? I understand the idea is not send you best friends, because you don't need your best friend's your best friend. Someone who you say hello in the street, but you're a bit shy to make a relationship with him. So this is to build friendship on Purim. You send him something, and you sit down, have a drink, and you schmooze and joke a bit, and then you become more friendly. That's the point. Anyway, Hud Manot means a portion. So he gave them their portion of the sacrifice, right? You forget, sacrifices are not all eaten by priests. Certain sacrifice, sin offering is eaten by the priest, but a regular sacrifice is eaten mostly by the owner. The priest gets a little bit of it, so there's a whole cow or shit, I don't know what animal it was, ready to divide the meat, the steak, to his family. So he gave his wife and their daughters and sons their pieces. Ulechana, and to Chana, yitain. Now yitain is, he gave? No, it's not.
Natan.
How do you say he gave?
He'll give.
Natan. How do you say, what does yitain means? He
will
will give.
give.
It's the future.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't make sense to say he will give, because, well, this is prophecy. It means he would give. It means when you're describing something which was an ongoing thing, not every day, but every time he had a sacrifice, he did this to his wife. So you're allowed to write the past, you're allowed to write the future, because they're both true about this thing. But you have to work out from the context. Yitzhak means he would give. To his wife, to Chana, he would give mana. Mana is a singular of manot, a portion. Achat, one. Apayim, double. I'm not sure how the word apayim means double, but it's clear from the context what it means. The word apayim is from the word af, which means a nose, means two noses. Maybe that's what you say in Hebrew. You say he gave it two portions. You say it's like pa'amayim. He gave a double. Why did he give a double? It means everyone got their portion, but Chana got a double portion. Ki yes Chana ahev, because Chana he loved. That doesn't mean he didn't like Penina, right? But she was the one he married. He married Penina for convenience because he wanted children. He married Chana because he loved her. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to have children, okay? But she was the one he loved. A bit similar to the story of Rachel and Leah. He married Leah because he got cheated, right? And then he married Rachel, so he loved Rachel. He loved Leah too, but he loved Rachel more than Leah. That's what it means over here as well. Vashem sagar rachma. And God sagar closed. Again, you see, it's a proof. It doesn't say, and God closed. God had closed. He didn't close it now. It means he had it in the past. Hashem sagar rachma, her womb. Now, maybe that was why he loved her, or that's why he gave her a double portion. If he just loved her, and that's the whole story, that wouldn't be a reason to give double portion. That would be not nice. Okay, you love one wife, give a double portion, that's going to make him really jealous. The point is, he loved her, but Hashem had, so to make her feel better in a sense. Yeah, Penina's got this 10 kids, or I think she had 7, I think. We'll see later on how many kids she had. And everyone's got another one, and she's doing one thing, I just like everybody else. So, because she was naturally felt embittered or sad about the situation, especially as making a big fuss about all the other kids, she doesn't have any of her own, so that's why he gave her a special portion, so she should feel a bit better about it. Okay, that was on a regular basis, okay? It's funny because it's describing what regularly happened, but it's also describing what happened on that day. Because it says on that day, and it describes what regularly happened. Because on this day, happened what regularly happened, that's all.
Then why tell us like that?
Because otherwise I'd have to say it twice. It's like, it regularly happened like this, and on this day he did the same. So I think that's what it's saying. On this day he did what he regularly did, and then there was one thing which was different about it, which is the way Chana reacted, and that's what we'll see. Okay? Tomorrow, please God. Okay, my friend.